What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and today we're continuing with the 32-team 7-round mock draft. We're moving on to the Raiders, and because of a fullback trade that happened like a day ago, I had to modify my mock draft. It's the pain of doing mock drafts a little bit early, but by this way here, I'm not going to give you guys like 2 or 3 mock drafts in a day because I'm scrambling for time. And you're going to get a mock draft every single day until, like, it's a countdown until the actual NFL draft. So I guess the little bit of annoyance that is me having to reshuffle things around is what comes with the territory. So looking at the Raiders under John Gruden, they've made some moves, some trades here and there. So before we look at the mock draft, we have to lay the framework out of what happened in free agency via signings and trades. So they lost TJ Carey, who was graded good from Pro Football Focus. I think he was their highest graded corner. They lost him. They traded or just released Michael Crabtree. We all know they replaced him. We'll talk about that in a second. But Crabtree, it's still up for debate. Personally, I think the guy they brought in, I would rather, but I know there's a lot of Raider fans that do like Michael Crabtree. They traded Cordero Patterson to the... Nope. Patriots. They traded him to the Patriots for a pick. And they traded fullback Jameez Olawale to the Dallas Cowboys in a 6th-round pick for a 5th-round pick. So a lovely fullback trade that made me have to reshuffle everything here. Which was annoying. Looking at what they added, they brought in safety Marcus Gilchrist, serviceable. They brought in Jordy Nelson, who was surprisingly cut from the Green Bay Packers. I think that's a great fit. Nice weapon there for Derek Carr. They brought in Doug Martin on like a prove-yourself deal. A little bit of uncertainty. Short-term, yes. Long-term with Marshawn Lynch and Doug Martin as your running backs. They need to get another guy in there. They brought in Rashad Melvin, who graded out well for Pro Football Focus for the Colts. They brought in Tank Carradine, who's a decent rotational edge rusher. It looks like they're going to a 4-3 front. And they signed Tahir Whitehead at linebacker. Finally, a linebacker for the Raiders. That is a great get for them. And in an instant start, he was a tackling machine at Temple in college, and then he was a tackling machine in Detroit. So those are how they, approach free agency. It was nice. It was pretty good. Now, let's jump into the mock draft, where they have a whole lot of picks. They have 4 6th-round picks. Mother of God. So jumping into the mock draft in the 1st round at pick number 10. They are selecting cornerback Denzel Ward from Ohio State. For me, looking at the roster long-term, he probably will be cornerback 2 if you assume that, Garyon Conley is going to pan out. He was a 1st-round pick in 2017. That's not that bad. Denzel Ward, get 2 Ohio State boys back there. The only problem with Denzel Ward is, can he play outside or can he play nickel? And I think the signing of Rashad Melvin, I think Melvin is capable enough to be a starter this year. And then you can have Denzel Ward start in the nickel, where 100% he is going to be a bona fide stud. And then, maybe you can start to work him on the outside. But you're not going to be forced with the Raiders because of that Melvin signing, which I think is a little low-key. You're not going to have to play Denzel Ward on the outside. Because like I said, man, countless times, I can see all the positives, all the things that's going to make Denzel Ward a good corner in the NFL and very much worthy of a 1st-round pick. Just watch the game. I can't stress enough against Indiana. Like, he just got so bad against a big wide receiver. He's going to go up against big wide receivers in the NFL. But still, he's going to be a stud and would be a great pick here for the Raiders. Going into the 2nd round, pick 41, I have them getting a value pick potentially because they're switching to that 4-3. I really hope they are. I'm using ourlads.com for the depth chart. I always figured they would for John Gruden, and now they have it updated where like Khalil Mack's playing defensive end and stuff like that, and they definitely need to reshuffle some things there on the line. So, because of that, I was selecting edge rusher Arden Key from LSU. Now, he's had some off-the-field issues, he's had some weight issues, some play issues, but if you look at his 2016 tape, his 2017 tape was not very good, and he looks like a 2nd, 3rd round pick. It's not terrible, considering that's how bad that's him at his worst. His 2016 tape, he looks like a top 10 pick. So I feel like the fact that you can take a gamble on that in the 2nd round, I feel like John Gruden's the type of coach that can get the best out of Arden Key. That could be an absolute value pick, and just seeing if Arden Key can finally turn it around, turn that corner, having him on one side and Khalil Mack on the other, that is just absolutely terrifying. So it is a gamble, a little bit of a risk there, but I think it's high risk, high reward, and the 2nd round is going to be worth it here for the Raiders. 3rd round, pick 75. I'm selecting defensive tackle B.J. Hill from North Carolina State. I think he walks right in. Defensive tackle 3. I assume their D tackles are probably going to be Justin Ellis and Mario Edwards to start it out. And then getting a guy like B.J. Hill that absolutely dominated the combine, ran a good 40, had really good bench press, looked good throughout the drills, severely improving his draft stock, as a lot of people now are starting to pay attention to a lot of these guys on North Carolina State, not just Bradley Chubb, because they were a very, very good defense. I think a guy like B.J. Hill would be a good fit to a team that's making a little bit of a scheme change. I think that a lot of times when a team changes from a 3-4 to a 4-3 in particular, it usually takes a year or 2 for them to really get all the pieces in place. But I think with all the assets that the Raiders have in this draft class, and by bringing in, Tahir Whitehead, Tank Carradine, you know, it gives them a little bit of flexibility that it might not be that big of a turnover because, you know, John Gruden's coming in. They need to win now. This is their window. They're still in their window to try to win, especially when you look at the older guys on that offensive line. You got to do it this year. Going to the 4th round pick, 110, Island selecting linebacker Micah Kaiser from Virginia. Looking at the roster, he probably will start as inside linebacker 3, but this is still a team that needs to add linebacking depth. When you look at the switch, I mean, what are you going to do with Bruce Irvin? Ultimately, you probably can have him play a little Sam, but I think he might be a little exposed in coverage. So you have Tahir Whitehead, and that's pretty much it. Unless they bring back Navarro Bowman, who's still unsigned. You know, Corey James, yeah. Kauser, yeah. Calhoun, yeah. So you're going to assume they'll probably will find a spot for Bruce Irvin, just bring him in on pass rushing downs. But in terms of just pure linebackers, Tahir Whitehead and no one else. I think a guy like Micah Kaiser has been a tackling machine at Virginia. Some people have him as a top 5 linebacker in this year's draft catch. I think it's a little crazy, but he's probably top 7. I had him right outside the top 5. Just excellent tackling production, great mechanics, and probably could start right away. In worst case scenario, fit onto the final 53 and contribute on special teams as a rookie. Going in the first of 2 5th-round picks, 159, I'm selecting tight end / just weapon, Jalen Samuels from North Carolina State. Really, like I said, he's great as an offensive weapon because he is, you know, we'll call him 6 feet tall, but he's probably a little bit closer to 5'11". But he just knows, he finds a way to score touchdowns, plays everything. He's kind of like, he's not as big, but he's pretty much the same way if you're watching this as a neutral, like kind of like Trey Burton. When Trey Burton was coming out of Florida for the Philadelphia Eagles, we all saw him go off to the Chicago Bears and get paid. Not the same type of size, but the same type of utility. I mean, Jalen Samuels, you can have him at fullback. You can have him, I mean, they did sign Keith Smith from Dallas, but I just think from terms of a guy that you can move all around the field, and Jared Cook's not that old, you know, why not? I think this is the type of weapon that John Gruden would say, yes, I'm going to find a way to get this guy involved in my offense, be it just H-back, be it anything, and just be able to find a way to get him in the end zone because he has a nose for it. And, you know, if it wasn't him, I think New England might be trying to target him a little bit here, but it also kind of fits with, you know, just a dynamic and a dimension that the Raiders could have on their offense. Going to the 5th round, the second 5th-round pick, 173. I'm selecting wide receiver Jester Way from Pitt. He'd come in as wide receiver 4. He's just a burner, 6'2", ran 4'4", low 4.4s. He's your speedster. You know, it is still the Raiders. They still need their speed. But looking at the wide receivers core, you have Amari Cooper, who's had some issues with drops. And I think if he has another down year, I mean, come to contract time, who knows what they're going to do. You got Jordy Nelson on a Band-Aid deal. You have Seth Roberts who can kind of contribute. But outside of that, I think he's slowly, low-key, need to prepare and start to, you know, add some depth to the wide receiver core. And Wee's the highest guy, or Wea, George Way. It's like, yeah, so it's Wee. George Way. Remember the soccer player? Anyone know George Way? Probably not. So Jester Way from Pitt. I think with just this dimension that he can add through the speed front, he's a little bit bigger than, say, Johnny Holton, who, you know, looking at the wide receivers right now, he's probably their deep threat, like, specialist. He's only in there pretty much on Hail Mary passes. I think Jester Way could fill that void and add some much-needed depth. Going to the 6th round, first of 4, at 210, I was selecting center Dijon Allen. Dijon Mustard, you know what I'm saying? From Hawaii. A lot of people compare him a little bit to Jason Kelsey on the Philadelphia Eagles. Undersized center, very, very athletic. And I look, you know, I just think top depth behind Rodney Hudson. You just want to try to build up this depth on the offensive line here for the Raiders because they're very expensive and they're all starting to get pretty old. Really, outside of Gabe Jackson, they're kind of old. Like Donald Penn, Les Emily, like those guys are either 30 or right around 30. So I think adding some depth, because when you look at the depth for the Raiders offensive line, not spectacular. David Sharp from my Florida Gators, probably the only guy that's considered legitimate depth. So get a nice little center here. Because you have this many picks, you got to build for depth and guys that can challenge for the final 53. And think a backup center could be what they need. Second 6th round pick, 212. I'm selecting kicker Eddie Pinheiro from Florida. My boy. You want, get Tavecchio. I don't know if they outright gave him the job, and more because, they got really rid of Sebastian Janikowski, old Seabass, biggest leg in the damn league. I feel like that was more of a cap move and not that Tavecchio won the job outright. He was pretty effective last year, but I think a guy like Eddie Pinheiro, get the next Seabass. He is like the biggest leg in college football. He is the biggest leg in quite some time in college football. We're going to put in Madden perspective. He'd probably have 98 kick power as a rookie, kind of like Jake Elliott did last year for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think add some competition there, and I think Pinheiro can definitely take over the starting kick job. Going to the third 6th round pick, 216, I'm selecting offensive tackle Jarrett Jones-Smith from Pitt. Then he'll come in as offensive tackle 3, more so depth at right tackle. Add some competition at right tackle. So you look at that right tackle spot, you have Vidal Alexander, Jalen Ware. it's going to be a battle. I think there's going to be a battle. Maybe you could look at playing David Sharp at right tackle as well if you're that high on them. But either way, they need to have more depth at tackle. And Jarrett Jones-Smith on some mock drafts have him going in the 5th round. Someone had him, I think the highest I've seen is the 4th round. In fact, for my mock that he's still here in the 6th, it's kind of all over the place. It was the best player available, adding much needed tackle depth to the Raiders. Final 6th round pick, 217. I then selecting offensive guard Jamil Demby from Maine. Again, another guy projected to go 5th round for sure-ish. But for my mock, he was still there in the 6th, adding more depth to the offensive line. When you look at the interior at the guard, not a whole lot. You have John Feliciano from the Florida Gators. That's pretty much Denver Kirkland. I mean, you know, these are just guys, add more competition, try to get better, add more depth. And then finish up the draft here in the 7th round pick, 228, as selecting running back Jordan Wilkins from Ole Miss. Come in as running back 4. He's the power back. Very, very impressive for, you know, the kind of down year that Ole Miss have. And I think ultimately, you know, Marshawn Lynch probably has one more year. You know, you got to start thinking about Doug Martin. Yeah, he's probably not going to pan out. So I just think you got to add another big-time, clear power running back. Jalen Richard's your receiving back. DeAndre Austin's kind of like the in-between type. So I think you can definitely get that power back in Jordan Wilkins in the 7th round. That is very, very nice value. So that was a lot of picks. When you have that many picks in the 6th round, it's, you know, it's not going to be exciting. We're going to be talking more about guys that can just help build some depth to the roster and fill in and try to make the final 53. So it wasn't like we're going splashy with a bunch of big wide receivers and flashy players. Try to get younger at a lot of positions and add some much needed depth, as well as really the first 4 picks could all have meaningful starting roles as rookies on this Raiders team. So let me know what you guys feel about this Raiders mock draft in the comment section below. This was a very frustrating one to do because I had to shuffle around the draft because of a fullback trade. Give me your Raider mock draft. If you're a Raider fan, let me know what your mock drafts looks like. We can stack them up, see which one looks better. If it's your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button, smash the like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.